You'd be a great new mother for another little kid. And it would be great for a kid to come into this house with a built-in brother and sister.
Behind the laugh track and lovable characters of What's Happening lies a treasure trove of shocking secrets. Tragic car accidents, 6 marriages to 4 women, legal middle name changes, million-dollar lawsuits, and deaths so lonely they went unnoticed for days. This groundbreaking 70s sitcom wasn't just making television history, it was living through real-life drama that rivaled anything on screen. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about What's Happening. Fact 1. Rerun. Was originally written for a skinny white actor.
Go to the bathroom, put on some of Mr. Wilson's cologne, then at least you'll smell odor.
Okay.
Okay.
When the creators of What's Happening sat down to develop the character of Freddie Stubbs, the lovable, dance-crazy friend who would become known as Rerun, they had a very specific vision in mind, and it looked nothing like Fred Berry. The original character breakdown called for a skinny white actor to fill the role, which makes the final casting choice all the more remarkable. When you consider that Fred Berry was a heavy-set African-American performer who would transform this character into one of the most memorable figures in 1970s television history. Berry had to fight for the role despite the producers' strong objections and their initial reluctance to even consider him for the part. At the time of his audition, Berry was already in his mid-20s and working as a professional street dancer with the Los Angeles-based group called The Lockers, which had appeared on Saturday Night Live and Soul Train. His background in dance and his natural comedic timing caught the attention of casting directors, but convincing the show's producers to abandon their original concept proved to be a significant challenge. The character earned the nickname Rerun because he was constantly repeating all of his classes during summer school, failing them repeatedly and having to take them over and over again. What the producers didn't initially realize was that Fred Berry would bring an entirely new dimension to this character through his trademark red beret, colorful suspenders, infectious personality, and the smooth dance moves he had perfected during his years performing with the Lockers on the street dance circuit and national television. Berry's portrayal became so popular that the show's writers began building entire storylines around Rerun's antics and misadventures, effectively stealing scenes from the other main characters. His catchphrase, "Hey, hey, hey," entered the cultural vernacular, and Rerun became a household name across America, proving that sometimes the best casting decisions are the ones that completely ignore the original plan. Fact 2. Fred Berry legally changed his middle name to Rerun.
I've been here so long I wouldn't know what to do anyplace else, Raj.
Fred Berry's connection to his character. Freddie Rerun Stubbs went far beyond just playing the role on television. The actor became so deeply identified with the lovable dancing teenager that he actually went to court and legally changed his middle name from Allen to Rerun, making his official name Fred Rerun Berry. This wasn't just a publicity stunt or a stage name. It was a permanent legal change that appeared on all his official documents and identification for the rest of his life. Berry embraced the character in ways that few actors ever have, blurring the lines between his on-screen persona and his real-life identity. Even when he wasn't filming, he could regularly be seen wearing Rerun's trademark red beret and flashy suspenders during public appearances, interviews, and everyday outings. While other child stars from the 1970s spent their careers desperately trying to escape typecasting and distance themselves from their most famous roles, Berry took the opposite approach and leaned into it completely. In interviews throughout his life, Berry openly expressed his love for being recognized as Rerun. He once said, "I'm still called Rerun and I love it. People ask me to dance every day, no matter where I am, in the grocery store or the bathroom." Rather than feeling trapped by the character that made him famous, he seemed genuinely grateful for the connection it gave him with fans. The majority of his post-What's Happening roles were either reprising the character of Rerun or appearing as himself, and he appeared comfortable with that reality. This deep identification with the role made Barry unique among his peers in Hollywood. While the decision to legally adopt the character's name might seem unusual to outsiders, for Barry, it represented a complete acceptance of who he had become in the public eye. He wore that red beret until the end of his life, maintaining the image that had brought joy to millions of viewers and secured his place in television history. Fact 3. Fred Barry was married 6 times to 4 women.
Listen, why didn't you tell us in the first place you were going down there to see that nurse?
Fred Barry's personal life was nearly as complicated as any sitcom plot, with a romantic history that left friends and family struggling to keep track. Over the course of his life, the beloved rerun actor walked down the aisle 6 different times. But here's where things get really unusual. He only married 4 different women. That's right. Barry was so convinced about love and second chances that he actually remarried 2 of his ex-wives, giving those relationships another shot after their initial marriages had ended in divorce. The exact details of which wives he remarried and when have remained somewhat murky over the years, as Barry kept much of his personal life relatively private, despite his public fame. What we do know is that his widow, Essie Barry, was his final wife and remained married to him from October 22, 1999, until his death in 2003. Barry also had 3 children from his various marriages, including daughters named Shannon and Portia, plus a son who went by Fred Barry Jr. Barry's complicated romantic life unfolded against the backdrop of his struggles with fame, addiction, and the pressures of being a sitcom star. In interviews, he was candid about how the stress of sudden celebrity affected every aspect of his life, including his relationships. The pattern of marrying, divorcing, and then remarrying the same person twice suggests someone who was searching for stability and connection, but found it difficult to maintain in the chaotic world of Hollywood. His multiple marriages became part of his personal story, just as much as his trademark red beret and suspenders became part of his professional identity. Barry never publicly discussed the reasons behind remarrying his ex-wives or provided detailed explanations about what drew him back to those particular relationships. Fact 4. The first episode. Aired wasn't the first episode filmed.
Some respect for myself. But if there's more truth, go ahead, tell me.
When What's Happening debuted on ABC on August 5, 1976, viewers tuning in to watch the premiere episode were actually seeing the second episode that had been filmed, not the first. The pilot episode, titled The Birthday Present, had been videotaped in front of a live audience at ABC television studios in the Los Feliz section of Los Angeles on March 16, 1976. But it wouldn't air until later in the show's run. Instead, the network and producers made the deliberate decision to lead with The Runaway, which had been filmed as the second episode during additional tapings that took place in June of that same year. The reason for this unusual switch had everything to do with Fred Barry and his incredible dancing abilities. The Runaway featured a short but memorable scene where reruns showed off the dance moves that Barry had perfected during his time as a member of the Lockers, a well-known Los Angeles-based street dance troupe. The producers and network executives believed that opening the series with Barry's eye-catching choreography would immediately grab viewers' attention and set the show apart from other sitcoms on television at the time. They were betting that reruns dancing would be such a strong hook that audiences would come back for more. And as it turned out, they were absolutely right. This strategic decision reflected how much faith the production team had in Barry's star power, even though he had beaten out the producer's original vision for the character. The gamble paid off tremendously, as What's Happening performed so well during its initial 4-week summer run that ABC ordered it to return as a full series that November. Barry's dancing became such an integral part of the show's identity that reruns moves were featured prominently in the opening credits and became one of the most memorable aspects of the entire series, proving that sometimes the second take really is the best one. Fact 5. Danielle Spencer survived a horrific car crash that killed her stepfather.
And you did it. No way in the world could you have beat me. A brand new player and you win.
On the morning of Tuesday, September 6, 1977, at 8:20 in the morning, 12-year-old Danielle Spencer and her stepfather, Tim Pelt, were driving to a script, reading at KTLA Studios in Los Angeles, when their lives changed forever. They were heading along Pacific Coast Highway at Temescal Canyon Road in Malibu, when another vehicle rear-ended their AMC Hornet station wagon with such force that it pushed them into oncoming traffic. Within seconds, they were hit head-on by another car in what became a devastating 5-car accident. Tim Pelt, who had introduced young Danielle to the world of acting and had been her biggest supporter, was killed instantly in the crash. Danielle herself sustained severe injuries, including a broken leg, broken arm, broken pelvis, and critical spinal and neurological damage that would affect her for the rest of her life. The impact was so severe that she fell into a coma and remained unconscious for 3 full weeks. When she finally woke up in the hospital, she had absolutely no memory of the accident itself, and tragically, she never got the chance to say goodbye to the stepfather she loved and considered her real father. The episode they were supposed to read that day was titled Trial and Error, and production had to continue without her while she fought for her life in the hospital. What makes this story even more remarkable is that Danielle Spencer did eventually return to the show and continued playing the wisecracking younger sister, Dee Thomas, but the injuries from that terrible morning in Malibu would haunt her throughout her entire life. Decades later, in 2004, she developed spinal stenosis directly related to the trauma from the 1977 accident, and surgery to correct the problem left her partially paralyzed for 8 months. In 2018, exactly 42 years to the date of the original crash, she suffered a bleeding hematoma in her brain that required emergency surgery, a complication doctors traced back to that same accident that had taken her stepfather's life more than 4 decades earlier. Fact 6, the Doobie Brothers episode featured real concert bootlegging.
Funny. I didn't think so either. Look, we really were forced. They said if we didn't do it, they'd hurt us.
One of the most memorable moments in What's Happening. History came during the 2-part episode titled Doobie or Not Doobie, which aired in January 1978 and tackled a serious crime that was plaguing the music industry at the time. The episode centered around Rerun getting involved with criminals who forced him, Raj, and Dwayne to illegally record a Doobie Brothers concert using hidden equipment, turning what should have been a fun night out into a dangerous situation where the boys were threatened by a menacing goon who literally ripped a counter stool out of the floor to intimidate them into cooperation. What made this episode truly special was that the actual Doobie Brothers appeared as themselves and performed several of their biggest hits during the show, including Takin' It to the Streets, Little Darling, and other fan favorites, giving viewers essentially a mini concert within a sitcom episode. The recorder famously falls out from under Rerun's coat during the performance, exposing the bootlegging operation, and the band members themselves help the boys catch the criminals, making them heroes in the story. This episode is considered one of the greatest moments in television history by many fans because most shows that featured musical guests would only include a single song, and often not even a hit, but the Doobie Brothers went all out and became an integral part of the plot, rather than just making a brief cameo appearance. The episode served as a powerful anti-piracy message wrapped in entertainment, showing young viewers the real consequences of bootlegging while also delivering one of the most entertaining hours of the entire series run, though ironically, the episode is now rarely shown in reruns, making it something of a lost treasure from the show's original 3-season run. Fact 7. Ernest Thomas nearly played Kunta Kinte in Roots.
Sang a song, you know, ow! And then they sang another song, you know.
Before Ernest Thomas became known to millions as Roger Raj, Thomas on What's Happening. he came incredibly close to landing one of the most iconic roles in television history. During the first season of What's Happening, in 1976, Thomas was one of the final two actors being considered for the lead role of Kunta Kinte in the groundbreaking miniseries Roots, which would go on to become a cultural phenomenon and one of the most watched television events of all time. The role eventually went to LeVar Burton, who was relatively unknown at the time, and Burton's powerful portrayal of the young African warrior captured and enslaved in America made him an instant star and earned the miniseries numerous Emmy Awards. Thomas had already proven his acting abilities through his Broadway experience and his work on What's Happening, which gave him serious consideration for the part, and he made it through multiple rounds of auditions before the final decision came down to just him and Burton. The producers ultimately chose Burton because they felt he brought a certain raw intensity and vulnerability to the character that perfectly matched what they envisioned for Kunta Kinte's harrowing journey. While losing out on such a major role could have been devastating, Thomas didn't leave the Roots production empty-handed. He was cast in a smaller but still significant role as Kailuba, appearing in the miniseries that aired in January of 1977 and captivated over 130 million viewers during its finale. Thomas later reflected that he considered his involvement in Roots, even in a supporting capacity, to be a blessing and an important part of his career, and he never expressed bitterness about not landing the lead role. The timing actually worked out well for him since he was already committed to What's Happening, which was gaining popularity and would run for 3 successful seasons, making him a household name in his own right as the smart, bespectacled teenager navigating life in South Los Angeles. Fact 8. Ernest Thomas wore fake glasses. Throughout the series,
I'm not spending a penny of this money. $25 more and my screenwriter's course is paid for.
when you think of Roger Raj, Thomas from What's Happening, one of the first things that comes to mind is probably those distinctive eyeglasses perched on Ernest Thomas's face. The wire-rimmed frames became such an iconic part of the character's look that it's hard to imagine Raj without them. But here's the surprising truth. Ernest Thomas has perfect vision and never needed glasses at all. Throughout the entire run of What's Happening, from 1976 to 1979, and again during the sequel series, What's Happening Now. From 1985 to 1988, Thomas wore completely non-prescription glasses purely as a costume choice. The frames were nothing more than plain glass lenses in stylish frames, chosen specifically to help define Raj as the smart, studious member of the teenage trio. This wardrobe decision proved to be incredibly effective in establishing the character's identity as the aspiring writer and voice of reason among his friends, creating a visual shorthand that told audiences everything they needed to know about Raj before he even spoke a word. The glasses helped distinguish him from the flashy, dancing Rerun and the smooth-talking Dwayne, giving Raj an intellectual appearance that matched his personality perfectly. What makes this even more interesting is how committed Thomas was to maintaining this illusion, wearing those fake glasses for every single episode across both series without ever letting on to viewers that they were simply a prop. The choice became so associated with the character that even decades later, when fans think about What's Happening, they picture Ernest Thomas with those glasses firmly in place, proving that sometimes the smallest costume decisions can have the biggest impact on how a character is remembered. It's a testament to the thoughtfulness of the show's creators and Thomas's dedication to his role that such a simple detail became such an unforgettable part of television history. Fact 9. The show's theme was composed by legendary Henry Mancini.
Well, see, my apartment needs painting, so I was wondering if you come over and help me do it this weekend.
Oh, yeah, we'll all come over, right?
When you hear those bright, funky horns that open every episode of What's Happening, you might not realize you're listening to the work of one of Hollywood's most celebrated composers. The show's instantly recognizable theme song was created by Henry Mancini, the same musical genius behind some of the most iconic melodies in film and television history. Mancini had already won 4 Academy Awards and multiple Grammy Awards by the time he composed the What's Happening theme in 1976, making him an incredibly prestigious choice for a sitcom about 3 teenagers in Los Angeles. Mancini was best known for creating Moon River from Breakfast at Tiffany's and the Pink Panther theme, which means the composer behind Audrey Hepburn's most romantic moment, and the slinky cartoon detective also crafted the upbeat soundtrack to Raj, Rerun, and Dwayne's Adventures. The theme appeared on Mancini's 1977 album titled Mancini's Angels, where it sat alongside his other television and film work from that era. The instrumental piece featured Mancini's signature sophisticated arrangement style, using a sopranino saxophone to hit those high, piercing notes that made the theme so distinctive and memorable. What makes this collaboration particularly unusual is that Mancini typically worked on major motion pictures and prestige television projects, not 3-camera sitcoms aimed at teenage audiences. His involvement with What's Happening demonstrated the production team's commitment to quality and their understanding that even a modest sitcom deserved a composer of Mancini's caliber. The theme became so associated with the show that it's impossible to hear those opening notes without immediately thinking of the gang hanging out at Rob's place. Mancini continued conducting symphony orchestras around the world and composing for major films throughout the show's run, proving that creating a sitcom theme was just another day's work for one of entertainment's most versatile musical minds. Fact 10, Mabel King left due to creative differences about black representation.
So you think you need something real bad, huh?
Raj, Mom asked you a question.
Mabel King, who played the beloved Mama Thomas on What's Happening, made the surprising decision to leave the show after only 2 seasons, and her departure had everything to do with fighting for better representation of black families on television. King, who had already earned a Tony nomination for playing the Wicked Witch in the Broadway production of The Wiz, wasn't afraid to stand up for what she believed in, and she grew increasingly frustrated with how her character was being written and portrayed on the show. The actress wanted to see Mama Thomas evolve beyond the typical single mother stereotype that was common in 1970s television, and she pushed hard for the writers to give her character a romantic partner or show more dimensions to her life beyond just being the disciplinarian mother who worked as a maid. King questioned why her character had to remain a struggling single parent when the show could have presented a more positive and complete picture of black family life to its audience. She also expressed frustration about being required to maintain her weight for the role, feeling that it reinforced negative stereotypes rather than breaking them down. According to Ernest Lee Thomas, who played her on-screen son Raj, there were ongoing tensions between King and the show's creators over the direction of her character. In a 1978 interview with the Philadelphia Inquirer, King diplomatically explained that she would only return to television if it made sense, adding that she wanted to do more drama and truth because that's what I'm really all about. The producers ultimately weren't willing to make the changes King requested, so she walked away from the show at the height of its popularity. Her departure was a principled stand at a time when authentic black representation on television was still rare, and she chose artistic integrity over a steady paycheck, leaving the show before the end of the 2nd season to pursue film roles that aligned more closely with her values. Fact 11. 2 main cast members died within a month of each other.
This gentleman here bothering you.
Take your hands off my girl.
I'm sorry, sir. Your girl?
The cast of What's Happening faced an eerie tragedy in late 1999 when 2 of its beloved stars passed away within just 1 month of each other, marking a heartbreaking end to an era for fans of the show. Mabel King, who played the no-nonsense mother Mabel Mama Thomas, died on November 9th, 1999 at Kaiser Foundation Hospital in Los Angeles at the age of 66. Just 31 days later, on December 10th, 1999, Shirley Hemphill, the sharp-tongued waitress who brought Shirley Wilson to life, was found dead in her West Covina home at age 52. Both women had been battling serious health problems for years, and both died essentially alone after their careers had long since faded from the spotlight. Mabel King's decline had been particularly devastating. She had been living with diabetes for decades, and the disease slowly ravaged her body. By 1991, she had lost both of her legs to amputation, and doctors eventually had to amputate one of her arms as well. A stroke in 1989 left her partially paralyzed and nearly speechless for over a year. She spent her final years at the Motion Picture and Television Country House and Hospital in Woodland Hills, California, where she died from organ failure when her kidneys shut down after years of dialysis treatment. Her death was announced 2 weeks after it happened, and many of her friends and former colleagues didn't even know she had passed until it was too late to attend her funeral. Shirley Hemphill's death from kidney failure came shockingly soon after King's passing, and it seemed almost impossibly tragic that the What's Happening family would lose two members so close together. The proximity of their deaths wasn't lost on fans and cast members, who saw it as a cruel twist of fate, that two women who had brought so much laughter to millions would exit the world in such similar circumstances, both suffering from kidney-related complications and both dying without the recognition their contributions deserved. Fact 12. Shirley Hemphill was found dead alone, undiscovered, for days.
Nothing? I heard you got more money than my...
On Friday, December 10, 1999, gardeners arrived at Shirley Hemphill's home in West Covina, California, about 30 miles east of Los Angeles, for their regular work. When they looked through a window, they saw something horrifying. The actress who had made millions laugh as the sassy waitress Shirley Wilson was lying face down on her bedroom floor, motionless. The gardeners immediately called authorities, and paramedics forced their way through the garage door to get inside. Shirley was pronounced dead at the scene, but what made the discovery even more tragic was that she had been there for days. The gardeners told investigators they had last seen her on December 3rd, meaning she had likely been lying there alone for about a week before anyone found her. Shirley had been living by herself in the West Covina home, and because she kept an unlisted phone number due to self-consciousness about her health problems, few people had regular contact with her. The coroner's office initially handled her death as a natural death, and an autopsy later revealed she had died from kidney failure at age 52. She had been suffering from kidney problems for many years and had been on dialysis, but she kept most of her health struggles private. What made the situation even sadder was that her death wasn't publicly announced until about 2 weeks later, which meant many of her friends and former colleagues from the entertainment industry weren't informed in time to attend her funeral. The lonely circumstances of Shirley's death stood in stark contrast to the joy and laughter she had brought to audiences throughout her career. Just 1 month earlier, her What's Happening! Co-star Mabel King had also passed away, making Shirley the second cast member to die in as many months. Unlike the characters they played on screen, who were always surrounded by friends and family at Rob's place, both women died alone, their passings largely unnoticed until it was too late. Fact 13. Creator Eric Monte sued and won $1 million, then became homeless.
Man, not always. Probably a bad diet and lack of exercise.
Behind the laughter and success of What's Happening lies one of Hollywood's most tragic stories of creative exploitation and personal downfall. Eric Monte, the brilliant writer who created the show, along with Good Times, and contributed to The Jeffersons, watched his career implode after daring to stand up for himself in 1977. Monte, who was born Kenneth Williams and grew up in Chicago's Cabrini Green housing projects, had hitchhiked to Hollywood with dreams of telling authentic stories about Black life in America. His screenplay for the film Cooley High became the basis for What's Happening! But Monte soon realized he wasn't receiving proper credit or compensation for his groundbreaking work. He filed a lawsuit against CBS, ABC, producers Norman Lear and Bud Yorkin and others, claiming they had stolen his ideas and cheated him out of millions of dollars. The lawsuit clearly had merit because Monty eventually received a $1 million settlement and a small percentage of residuals from Good Times. However, the victory came at a devastating cost. After filing the lawsuit, Monty found himself completely blacklisted by the Hollywood establishment, with producers labeling him as difficult to work with and refusing to buy his scripts. The only work he managed to sell after Good Times ended were single episodes of The Wayans Brothers and Moesha, the latter of which Monty himself called the absolute worst script he had ever written. Monty unwisely invested much of his settlement money into financing a play he had written titled If They Come Back, which turned out to be a commercial failure and contributed significantly to his financial ruin. By 2003, unable to find work and spiraling into despair, Monty had developed a severe addiction to crack cocaine. He declared bankruptcy and by 2006 was living in a Salvation Army homeless shelter in Bell, California, a heartbreaking fall for a man who had once driven a Mercedes-Benz and lived in a luxurious house with his 2 daughters. Fact 14. Haywood Nelson was almost cast in Good Times. Instead,
That was Life is Love.
Life is what?
Life is love.
before Haywood Nelson became a household name as the lovable Dwayne on What's Happening. He came incredibly close to joining another groundbreaking black sitcom that would have changed television history. In 1974, Nelson was actually hired to play Michael Evans, the youngest son on Norman Lear's Good Times, which followed the Evans family living in a Chicago housing project. The producers had gone through their audition process, made their decision, and officially offered Nelson the role that would have made him part of one of the most influential black families on television. However, in a stunning turn of events, the producers suddenly rescinded their offer before Nelson ever appeared in front of the cameras. The reason had nothing to do with Nelson's talent or ability as an actor, but rather came down to a specific type of experience he hadn't yet developed at such a young age. Ralph Carter, who ultimately won the role of Michael Evans, had extensive experience performing in front of live theater audiences, having already established himself on the Broadway stage. The producers felt that Carter's comfort level with live audience reactions and his ability to deliver lines with the timing required for a multi-camera sitcom format gave him an edge that Nelson, despite his natural talent, hadn't quite developed yet. This decision proved to be a sliding doors moment that shaped both actors' careers in dramatically different ways. While Carter became known for playing the socially conscious, intelligent Michael Evans, who often challenged his family's perspectives on issues like race and politics, Nelson would go on to become Dwayne Nelson just 2 years later on What's Happening, creating a completely different but equally memorable character. Interestingly, Nelson has mentioned this near miss in interviews over the years, and rather than expressing bitterness about losing the Good Times role, he's acknowledged that everything worked out exactly as it should have, since he couldn't imagine his life without having played Dwayne. Fact 15. Danielle Spencer became the first child sitcom star in the Smithsonian.
I sure am sorry you have to miss that really wonderful party and all that fun you're not gonna have.
In 2014, Danielle Spencer achieved something no other child actor from a television sitcom had ever accomplished before when she was inducted as part of the permanent exhibition at the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. This prestigious honor recognized not just her role as Dee Thomas on What's Happening, but her entire journey from child star to veterinarian and her significance in representing African American culture on television during a pivotal era. The Smithsonian's decision to feature Spencer in their museum placed her alongside other iconic figures in Black history, cementing her legacy beyond the small screen and acknowledging the groundbreaking nature of the show she helped bring to life. What made this recognition particularly meaningful was that Spencer had long since left Hollywood behind by the time she received this honor, having earned her doctorate in veterinary medicine from Tuskegee University in 1993, and built a completely different career caring for animals. In a 2016 interview with a local Richmond television station, Spencer reflected on seeing herself featured at the Smithsonian and expressed genuine surprise at the honor, noting how her stepfather, who had died in the 1977 car accident, had been the one who brought her into the world of acting in the first place. She told the interviewer that at age 9 she got the call that she had won the role of Dee, saying, "A month later I got a phone call, and they said, 'Fly out to California, you have the role.' And it was just like my life changed." The exhibit at the Smithsonian highlighted how What's Happening was the first African-American show that dealt specifically with teenagers, making it a groundbreaking sitcom that opened doors for future representations of Black youth on television. Spencer's inclusion in this museum represented not just personal achievement, but the cultural impact of a show that gave young Black viewers characters they could see themselves in during an era when such representation was extremely rare on American television.